This is a fascinating text when you take the time to stop and really dig in and try to understand what is taking place. What is Jesus doing in the life of Peter? Yes, it's restoration, but it's much deeper than just, okay, Peter, you're good, come on, let's go, everything's great. He's really going to dig down and do a work in his life. And so we need to see this deeper work of spiritual restoration. It's process, because the Lord does the same for you and me because He loves us. And He wants us to understand what it means to follow Him. It is a process. It's not always a pleasant process, but it's a needed process. It's almost like spiritual surgery in Peter's life, pulling back the layers of his heart, letting him see what it's really all about. I know as a father, when our children were little, oftentimes they go out and they get a splinter in their finger or in their foot, and they'd come in and say, oh, this hurts, this hurts. Get it out, do something about it. And you say, okay, well, let's get a needle out and we'll sterilize it. And you get the needle out and you get it red hot on the end, and they say, no! Well, of course it's not going to be hot, but you got to get it clean, right? And you go to put that needle right where that splinter is, and they're like, no, don't do. How many people in here are scared of needles? Let's be honest. Come on. Thank you, Calvin, for being honest. And, that's a real thing, right? Needles, come on, But look, the needle is needed to remove the splinter that's causing the pain. That's the fact of the matter. And so in Peter's life, he wants to be around Jesus. He wants the restoration. But what he's going to realize is there's some spiritual surgery that's got to take place. And that's what I want us to see today. I've broken the message down into 3 parts. I want us to see love is the key. We must obey, where he says, obey me. Then we're going to see, let's go, follow me. And then thirdly, stay in your lane, trust me. These 3 points will guide us through the remainder of this so we can fully understand it. In the first point, we're going to go back and address some verses we read last week because we need to fully understand what love is all about. And so I want to draw your attention into verse 15 and following. And I want to read this and just read it slowly, and let's try to understand what's taking place here, and then we'll talk about it in depth. In verse 15, he says, and when they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these? All the niceties, all the greetings, handshaking, hugging, whatever happened, all the meal that took place that morning, and the physical nourishment that took place was fine. But now Jesus speaks up. He looks at Simon and he asks them this all-important question, do you truly love me more than these? Now we've talked about the these. There can be many different things. But he's wanting to know, do you truly love me? Because love is the key. Yes, Lord, he said, I love you. Jesus said, okay, feed my sheep. And if you'll draw a line from I love you to feed my sheep, it will help you see and understand that love is connected to obedience. It's not just lip service. All right, if you do love me and you say you love me, then here's what I need you to do. Do you get that? Okay? And now we go a little further. In 16, he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. So you draw a line from I love you to take care of my sheep, because love is action. Love is obedience to what Jesus knows He needs us to do and what is best. A third time this happens, and the scripture says Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you, and draw your line from I love you over to feed my sheep. Because if it's more than just a verbal affirmation that you love me. Here's what I'm asking you to do. You get that? So love equals obedience, not just verbal affirmation of loyalty. Yes, Peter was hurt the third time when he was asked. But oftentimes, here's what Jesus knows is He must hurt us before we can be helped. He must reveal what needs to be revealed in order that we can be restored. My parents used to say things to me like this, and I never could quite grasp them. They would say, Mark, this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. Why do parents say things like that? What does that even mean as a child? How are you to understand that in the midst of a disciplinary process? You're saying what's happening here is hurting you more than me. I don't buy it, right? But you know what? That's what's going on here. It's that Peter's got to be hurt before he can be helped spiritually. And oftentimes that's how it is. And for you as well, and as for me, I've been hurt. The Lord's hurt me. The Lord's revealed some things in my heart and shown me things where I thought I was in line. And He said, no, Mark, here's what you need to see if you're going to go forward with me. And that's what's taking place. And this is all based on love. Let me put it this way to you. I'm going to give you a number of key things to remember about love in this text. Love is the focus of this spiritual restoration process. Parents love their children. That's why they discipline them, right? Well, love is the focus of the spiritual restoration. If we miss this, when Jesus brings the hurt into our lives, we will resent it and resist it instead of receive it in order to lead to restoration. If you don't understand that a person is doing what they're doing because they truly, genuinely love you, you'll miss it altogether. Jesus is setting forth this priority that it's about love. It's not about Peter's spiritual gifts. It's not about his passion. It's not about his verbal participation or what he thought he could do or what he thought that he knew was better. This has nothing to do with any of that. He didn't say, hey, Peter, don't you have some spiritual gifts you can use to accomplish my will? He didn't ask him that. He didn't say, what's your passion, Peter? He said, no, do you love me? That was the key. That was the focus. So the focus was on love. It is as well, love is the foundation for the believer in everything that we do. It should be the driving force behind everything the believer does. If I was to ask you to rate your love for Jesus, where would you rate it between a 1 and a 10? Would it be mostly verbal affirmation, or does it show in the way that you live? This is really what Peter's grappling with here. Love should be the foundation. It is the focus. It's also, I would say, the force. I love what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 5, verse 14, talking about why they did what they did in regards to proclaiming the gospel and living the way that they did. He says in verse 14, I love this verse, he says, for Christ's love compels us. See, it's the force. It's why I do what I do. My love for Jesus allows me to serve with effectiveness. Did you know that love for Jesus is what prevents burnout? It is our love for Jesus that allows us to serve in the church. If somebody says, you serve in your church, why do you do that? Because I love Jesus. You serve in your home. You go and you clean up the dishes when maybe it's not your responsibility. You meet a need because you love that person. Not because you're trying to get some brownie points. Not because you're trying to get in a better position to get what you want. You do it because of love. The Bible says love your enemy. How do you do that? That's a supernatural love that comes. You do it because love is the key. Love is this force that drives us. We should also see that love is more important. It's more than just lip service. Peter had to understand that love was more than just what rolled off his lips. It had to be what was seen in his life. He needed a fuller understanding of what love really was, because he'd been proclaiming all along, oh, I love you, Jesus. I want to follow you now. Hey, I love you. I'll die for you. He had all the right words, but he did not have the internal strength and ability to follow through when the hard times came. Isn't this what we get real put out about with our politicians? They say one thing and they do another. And we go, you can't trust them. And that's not all politicians, but I'm saying in general, they kind of get that reputation. They go over here and they promise all these things that they're going to do, and then you see them over here doing something different, and it causes you to question, well, what is the difference between a man like Peter who says, I'll die for you, but over here, he's denying the Lord to the little servant girl? What's the difference? What's the difference between us saying we love the Lord, Yes, Jesus saved my life. Yes, I'm going to heaven, and I love Him. But when you look at our lives, if we're not really following Him and serving Him, why would the world want to even believe what we have to say? They can read the way we are living our lives. See, it's more than just lip service. Probably the most important question that is asked here in this text is simply this: do you love me? Do you love me? See, that's what a relationship with Jesus Christ is all about. It's about love. Jesus says, Mark, do you love me? How do I answer that? You put your name in the blank. Do you love me? Isn't that ultimately the question? Do I love Jesus? Matthew 22:37-40 says this: love, which we know is obedience to the Lord, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. First and greatest commandment. The second is like this: love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. You cannot argue that love is not the greatest call on our lives toward Jesus. And doesn't it say that God loved us by sending His Son Jesus? For God so loved the world, He first loved us, so we love Him back. Isn't this whole deal about love? And He's asking him, do you love fishing, Peter? See, that was the issue for Peter. He was going back to what he knew. These things more than me. Maybe you love hunting. Maybe you love the mountains. Maybe you love the beach. I don't know what it is that you love. But if it comes between you and your relationship with Jesus and He's no longer priority, He's going to pull you aside. He'll cook you a meal. He'll sit you down. He'll let you know that He loves you. Then He's going to ask you a question: do you love me? That's what's going on for Peter. See, when it comes to a relational deal, you got to determine which one's it going to be. There's a girl, she's out and, say she's college age and she's in college and she's dating a couple different guys. She's got to determine, do I love Ben or do I love Scott? And then if it's a guy who's, he's dating Jane and Sue, he's got to determine, do I love Jane or do I love Sue? There comes a point in time you've got to decide, who do I love as priority? And the same is true with Jesus. He's asking, he wants to know. And I just wonder, do we even understand this love? Do I really love Jesus? Do I even grasp the great love God had for me in sending His one and only Son to die for me? People are very confused in today's culture. We think that love is doing a favor for God. If I come to church, if I give a little something here or I give a little something there of my life or my finances, if I have an association, then obviously I love Jesus. Do you? Do you really? Can we have an on and off again relationship with Jesus? I mean, that's really what Peter's dealing with here. And Jesus is calling him back. Can we just say, I'm going to take a break for 10 years, Lord, and I'll be back to serve you when it's more convenient for me? Is that what the Bible teaches? The Bible doesn't teach that. What Peter's going to see is that Jesus is going to call him to say, hey, you come follow me. You say, well, I got 10 years, I've got to do some things. What things? What things? These things, whatever those things may be, are they greater than the love God has for you and the love He calls you to have for Him in giving your life and serving in His purposes? I'm here to tell you today, there is absolutely nothing you can give your life to that is greater than loving Jesus and whatever it is He calls you to do for Him. There's nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that's what we're learning here. And when you fall in love with Jesus and you're willing to follow Him, you'll obey Him willingly, not reluctantly. I invite people to do ministry. I invite people to follow the Lord. And I've always learned that those who hedge and they hesitate and they don't want to get involved, it's an issue of the heart because they've not really surrendered to love Jesus and say, whatever He's calling me to, I'll do. Because when you find the person who's in a surrendered state, they're willing to do whatever God wants them to do. They receive it, and it doesn't mean it's easy, but they receive it with a heart of joy, and they're willing to do whatever. And you say, how can they do that? Because they love Jesus. That's why. It's the only reason why. The key to ministry is to pray for and lead people to love God I mean, that defines what my ministry is to lead people, to pray for people, to love God with all their heart. And when they do that, everything else works. It's so beautiful to watch. I've watched people that love things, and when they love things, they talk about those things, they participate in those things, and it's very natural for them, whatever it is. But what ought to be on number one on our list is our love for Jesus. See, what he's trying to get Peter to understand is simply this. Don't place anything above me. Not your fish, not your friends, not your fleshly boast, what you thought you could do. I just need you to love me and let me lead you. So as we're looking at these things, listen, love is the focus, it's the foundation, is the force. It's more than lip service, but I also want you to know that love does the hard work. There's hard work involved when it comes to love. What he said to him were these things: I need you to feed the sheep, I need you to care for the sheep. That was the emphasis. When it comes to feeding, this is challenging. I know I do it. It's what I'm called to. It's a spiritual work, but it's a challenging work. It is a rewarding work, but it's a hard work. It's not a one-time work, it's an ongoing work. You go to care for the sheep. Listen, shepherds had to put their life on the line. They'd stay up all night, they'd protect the sheep from the bears, from the lions, from whatever may come to attack them. If one was taken off, they would have to go after it, that one, search for it, rescue it, engage whatever had it, and bring it home safely. The caring is a demanding work of dedication. It is so much, listen, it is so much more than an emotional declaration of love. The caring and the feeding is the giving of your life because you love. And what Jesus is calling Peter to is this full understanding of what he needed him to do. You say you love me? Okay, feed my sheep. You say you truly love me? Okay, take care of my sheep. Let me do it a third time, and now he's hurt, but I need you to really understand this. This is going to be hard work. It's not going to be a one-time deal. This is not going to be an act of bravado, and you go home a hero. This is going to be week in, week out, day in, day out, season in, season out, year after year. I need you to do this. Let me ask you again, Peter, do you really love me? See, that's where he's headed. And boy, that's what it takes to really follow the Lord and to love Him. It takes daily dedication, a daily dying. It's a tending to. That's why most of us don't plant gardens. It's too much work. You think you're going to plant a garden and everything's going to be great. No, you got to get out there and weed it. You got to go. You got to water it. You got to tend to it. You got to prune the vines, right? You got to do all that work, right? It's a lot of work. Just keep your grass up in your yard. I've always said, whatever you create, you must maintain. And may I say to you this, whatever God calls you to, it requires work. Did you hear that? Sunday school teachers, discipleship group leaders, if God's called you to that, there's going to be a work element. I mean, hours of digging, seeking, hearing from the Lord, hours of giving to other people, hours of leading other people, praying for them. It takes work. You say, God's called me to missions. Well, get busy because it's going to be an act of love, but it will be work. God's called me to be a mother. Well, there's no work involved in that. Just it's an easy life, right? No work there. Oh, let me tell you, you give physically, emotionally, spiritually, you give everything you have to raise that child for God's glory. It's work. I mean, whatever it is God's called us to, there's an element of work. And we are living in a society, and the reason I'm honing in on this is we're living in a society that's a take it easy society. If I can take it easy, I'm good. If God will bless me, it's great. And then I'll love Him. If He'll give me what I want, I love Him, and I'll declare it to the world. He doesn't need us to declare His greatness because He blesses us financially. What He wants is this: listen. It's not about prosperity, it's about following me even when it gets hard, even though it takes a lot of work. Oh, but listen, all of this is not legalism. This is not performance. This is based on love. Love is the key. And what he's saying to Peter is this: Peter, obey me. Now, secondly, we move a little further and we see this: you got to let go and follow me. Verse 18, he says, I tell you the truth. When you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. What is going on here? Jesus is telling him something about his future and what's coming. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. And then he said to him, follow me. Can I summarize that for you? Let me just do it like this. If Jesus came up to you and he said, listen, I love you and you say you love me and I have some things I want you to do, but let me tell you, in that obedience, coming down the road, you're gonna suffer. You're gonna die in such a way, it's nothing you would plan for or want for, but I want you to know that when you die in this way, it's gonna bring glory to the Father. There's something in this that you wouldn't plan for, you wouldn't want, but yes, it's hard, yes, it's suffering. In fact, it's how you're gonna die. And you may not like it, but I'm telling you, it is what's gonna bring glory to the Father. And so I've gotta say this to you. Knowing that, follow me. What? Really? What? Hey, Peter, come here. If you'll follow me, you're going to get rich. You'll have a position. Men will praise you and love you. They'll never reject you. It's going to be incredible. Hey, come follow me. No. He said, I'm going to tell you the kind of death you're going to die. And we don't know biblically from this, but we know historically, we have record of this, that Peter died by crucifixion, but he refused to die as Jesus died. So he asked to be hung upside down, so not to be crucified like his Savior. He didn't feel worthy. Crucifixion was his death that would glorify God. Wow. Peter had to grasp this. Peter, do you understand this? The fullness of this? And now I need you to follow me. We don't like the hard things, the fearful things, the things that take faith, the things that leave us feeling out of control when it comes to the future. But I think the Lord does it like that on purpose. Because if not, we'd be in control. If not, we would do it our way. He says, trust me, follow me. In John 13, 37 through 38, Peter, this was earlier on, asked, he said, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. You know what? He was trying to follow them, but he wasn't prepared to follow. He said he would lay down his life. He didn't. Ultimately, he would. And die a crucifixion hung upside down. But the whole deal in this following, Peter had to understand what was involved in it. It was a love relationship. See, following is the key in this love relationship with Jesus. Will I follow? Jesus honed in on this term over and over and over again. And not just Peter, but the other disciples. He said, come follow me. You say, what does it mean to really follow Jesus? I'll give you these scriptures and you can look these up for yourself and determine what it means. But let me give you an overview. In John 12, 25 through 26, I would say that following Jesus is to be where Jesus is. In 26, he said, whoever serves me must follow me. And where I am, my servant also will be. Be where Jesus is. That's following him. I would also say, in defining what does it mean to follow Jesus, I would say it is very simply to be a cross bearer. In Matthew 16, 23 and 24, he talked about this. And in 24, he said, if anyone would come after me, meaning to follow, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Be a cross bearer. Be where Jesus is. Be a cross bearer. Thirdly, I would say this, be willing to suffer. In Philippians 3, 7 through 11, Paul gives this incredible understanding of his heart and his desire. And he even talks in verse 10 about the suffering aspect of it. And he says, I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of sharing in his what? His partying, his celebrations, his renown. No, in his suffering, becoming like him in his death, and so somehow to obtain to the resurrection from the dead. See, you have to grapple with this doctrine of suffering if you're really going to be a follower of Jesus. So this, okay, everything's going to be great kind of doctrine that people are putting out there. If you follow Jesus, your life is blessed and you're going to be great and all this kind of thing. Let me tell you something. If you don't factor in the suffering aspect, you cannot be following Jesus. He said none of us are above our master, and if our master suffered, we're going to suffer. And it's a blessing to suffer. I know that's hard to say. I know that's hard to receive. But look at the Beatitudes. Look at how Jesus lived. Look at what he said to us. You can't get away from it. But we live in a culture where it's not about following Jesus. The question is, how many people are following me on my social media? Life is about me, what I put up, what I project, how I get other people to love me instead of love Jesus, and how many followers I get. We should stop that stuff, and we should start getting people to follow Jesus, because that's who we are following. But we live in this crazy culture where it's really more about, hey, I'll identify with, I'll have an association with, but I don't want to go all the way and follow. I'll be a cross wearer, but not a cross bearer. But if all you want to do is wear a cross for identification, that's not following Jesus. Let's tell the truth. Let's just tell it for what it is. You got to be willing to take up your cross. You're not even going to take that up if you don't die to yourself. And cross-bearing is not to go and be crucified. We know Jesus did that. It could mean that some people die for their faith, but it means this: no longer your will, but his will. No longer what you want, but what he wants. Let's get it real simple. Die to yourself. Don't make life about yourself. Make it about your Savior. Yeah, why is Jesus going to all this emphasis of bringing clarity to what this means to be his follower? Because it was needed. That day and time, to have a loose association with Jesus was popular. There were large crowds following. But as his ministry went along, he divided those. He called people out. He said hard things. And he wanted to know really where their heart was. Do you want to be part of a movement, or do you want to follow me? That's what he was after. Because he knew that if they were really going to follow, and when the real spiritual fallout came, only those whose hearts were dead to themselves and alive to him would be able to follow. And we've got to get beyond all our association with Jesus and start following. Luis Palau said this: Jesus didn't save us to leave us where we are. He wants to change us from what we once were to what he wants us to be. Peter's life gives us hope in our process of following Jesus. He was up, he was down, he was left, he was right, and finally, as he followed, it was a straight line in the will of God. Beautiful. You come to Christ, at the moment you surrender your life, I don't care if you're a young child, you're a young adult, whether you're further along in your life, wherever you are, you come to Christ, at that moment you die, Christ lives in you, and now a process begins. Spiritual growth, what it means to follow, what God has for you, his will for your life. He'll take your gifts, his will, marry those together, and as you follow him, you'll bring glory to his name and whatever it is that he calls you to. And in that, listen, you go from being this person who was self-absorbed, all about yourself, now dead, the Spirit coming through you, and guess what happens? You begin to transform in your life. It's called transformation. You begin to bear fruit. You're abiding in the vine. The fruit is showing. You are doing things you're not capable to do yourself. You're loving people. You're patient with people. You're speaking truth. You're doing all these things. And let me tell you something. None of that is to our credit. And the moment that as we abide in that way, we live in that way, we're transformed in that way, we bring glory to his name, and whatever he asks us to do, he gets the glory, we don't, because we're following him. It's beautiful to see it. Follow me. Follow me. Got a little hiccup that's coming. He's going to address him right here in verses 20 through 23, and it's a stay in your lane kind of thing. Trust me. Peter turned, listen to verse 20, turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved, which we believe that's John, was following them. This was the one who leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had said, Lord, who's going to betray you? When Jesus saw him, he asked, Lord, what about him? What about him? And let me tell you something. There's probably not a person in this room or person watching that hasn't asked the Lord that question about somebody else. Well, what about them? What about him? And this is how Jesus answers that. Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? What is that to you? It's kind of like saying this, none of your business. None of your business. Here's your business. You ready? You must follow me. You must follow me. Because of this, rumor spread among the brothers that this disciple would not die. But Jesus did not say he would not die. He only said, if I wanted him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? So what's going on here? Peter hits the pause button. He asks Jesus a question. It's like they're walking along. They've begun to walk, and he said, come on, follow me. Here we go. And as they're walking, he looks back and he says, hey, wait a minute, Jesus, wait a minute. What about him? What about him? Jesus said, that's none of your business, Peter. I've given you your job. Follow me. How many of us have been so concerned about God's will in other people's lives that it's led us to comparing and competing with other believers to the point that we're no longer following him? The spirit of competition among believers is deadly. This whole thing where he said, you must follow me, what it literally means in the Greek is this, keep on following me. Keep on. Can I ask you a question? Did Jesus call you to follow? The answer is that's yes. Where that took place in your life, I can't tell you exactly. But I know if you're a believer, he's spoken that truth to you. He's called you to come follow. But not just follow one time, not one event, one season, but to keep on following. And I want to ask you a question. What is it that you've hit the pause button on and you've looked back and said, well, what about him, Jesus? Or what about this, Jesus? I want to go fish. Or Jesus, what about? It could be a lot of things that cause us to stop following. And whatever it is, man, deal with it. Deal with it. It's not worth it. If you want to build a bigger house, you want to have a better car, you want to go on a better trip, I don't know what it is, you want to be in competition with somebody else, just stop all that and keep on following Jesus. There are no shortcuts. None. There's none. My job and your job is to follow, not meddle in the lives of other people. Follow Jesus. You know, we were on the men's hiking trip this past 3 days. We just got back yesterday. We were gone Thursday, Friday, and Saturday up in Pisgah National Forest up in North Carolina. Great trip. One night, we're sitting around the fire, and Mark Hamrick said, man, it's hard to beat a good fire. And Mark really appreciated all the work the other people did to make that fire roar. He helped some. But I got what he was saying. It's something about sitting around a fire. It warms you. The light's fascinating to watch. It's just something about that. You know what? Peter's life revolved around a fire to some degree. It was around a fire that he denied the Lord. And the little servant girl said to him as he was warming himself around a fire, you are one of his. He said, no, not me. But there was another fire that morning as Jesus cooked Peter's breakfast, as he warmed himself around that fire, that Jesus asked him the all-important question, do you love me? One was a fire of denial, one was a fire of restoration. God was redeeming. We're doing a redeeming, restoration process in Peter's life. I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful when he's done that in mine. That he's patient with me, he's loving, and he calls me back to follow him in a surrendered state. It's interesting to me, I was thinking about our trip. We drove up Thursday morning, got there around, 12 o'clock, and was about 4 or 5 cars that gathered there in the parking lot at the fish hatchery, and that's where we would unload everything and begin the 3 days of backpacking out in the national forest there. So we got there, and everybody got out, and everybody started getting all the gear out, getting their boots on, getting their packs out, getting their hiking sticks, making sure they have water, the whole deal. And so everybody's geared up, and all the different devotional materials passed out, and people stick that in their backpacks, and they're ready to go on this trip. And everybody puts their pack on. And we were there, and there was another church group there from the area that was doing the same thing that weekend. And as we had gotten there a couple minutes before them, and we were all loaded up, about to go, and one of the people from the other group said, "Hey, you want us to take a picture of you?" And they said, "Well, yeah, that'd be great." So we all kind of gathered in the parking lot. And, those kind of pictures, they're great because you look so fresh and you hadn't taken a step and you look like, man, I'm strong. And, you really should take those pictures afterwards and see what you look like. And so you're all standing there, you look awesome, and you got your pack on, you something, right? And you take the picture and you say, "Oh, thanks, man. Thanks for taking that picture." And then we take a couple of steps toward the trailhead. Now, this did not happen, but I want you to imagine if it did happen. And as we started down the trailhead, somebody said, "Hold on, everybody. Stop for a second." And everybody comes to a stop, and somebody says, "Look, right over here is a really good spot. It's green grass, it's flat. I believe there's some water nearby. What do you think about we just camp right here?" "Oh, man, that's a great idea. Get the tents out. Somebody make a fire. Let's unpack all our stuff. Hey, man, we can eat early. This is going to be great." And we took a maximum of about 23 steps before we stopped and set up camp. What would that be like? We got the picture. We've got the equipment. We're looking the part. We can tell people we went, right? What kind of hiking trip would that be? I just want to say to you, there's a lot of people, that's the kind of hiking trip they want with Jesus. They want to wear the pack. They want to take the picture. They want to have the experience. But that's it. They don't want to follow up the trail. They don't want to walk 8 miles, hiking, elevations, and even the ones that are down are challenging because they challenge muscles you normally do not use. Just because you're going downhill doesn't make it easy. They don't want to sweat. They don't want to be concerned about other people. They don't want to follow and do the hard things, right? That's just too hard to do all that. But what I want you to see and understand, just like that hiking trip we were on this weekend, that's really what real life is like. Jesus says, "Listen, I know what's coming for you, Peter. In fact, your death is going to be one that glorifies me. There's going to be suffering involved in this deal. I don't want you to worry about anybody else. All I need you to do is follow me. Will you do it?" And you think, why would it, now some of you are already thinking this, why would you travel 3 hours to the mountains, take all the time to pack all that gear up, put 30, 40 pounds on your back, and hike up mountains, sweat, have pain, sleep on the ground? Why would, "Pastor, you're crazy." See, y'all just thought I was crazy. Now you know I'm crazy because I went and did that. Why would any sane person do that kind of stuff? Well, I did it because I enjoy it and I love it, and I love the ministry that God does in the hearts of men. In the midst of all that, that's why I do it. But you say, why would somebody do that? Why would somebody follow? Why did Peter follow? Why would we follow? Why do we do that? The bottom line, here, you ready? Here it is. It's simply this: because you love Jesus. Why does somebody teach Sunday school for 40 years? Because they love Jesus. Why does somebody, go to all the effort to travel around the world and do missions? Sometimes we don't understand that kind of call in their life because they love Jesus. Why would they sacrifice when they can have pleasure here and go and have pain there? Because they love Jesus. And there's more joy in the surrender to follow, even though it's hard, because it's about being in right relationship, and right relationship with Jesus is all about love and obedience to God's calling because He knows best. So we went on and we hiked, and the second day, we were good and tired the second day, but we went up what they call to John's Mountain. And as we went up to this rock face, it was a very strenuous trail. You can see the little markers, and it says very difficult or more difficult. I don't remember what it was, but it's a hard trail. It's got that reputation. And up we went, and up we went, and up we went, and up we went. And even the youngest and the strongest, I promise you, their muscles were screaming. But we all made it up there. And when we got to John's Rock, we were blessed with a view that was just absolutely incredible. You got to see the valley and the mountains and the colors on the trees. And in the distance, you could see the Blue Ridge Parkway. You see other mountains. It was just gorgeous, the clouds. And it was just beautiful. And we just sat there for probably about an hour and just looked at the view. And then somebody said, oh, look right there. Look, that's a bald eagle. And sure enough, it was. And then somebody said, no, look over there, there's another one. And we watched these two bald eagles fly. It was just beautiful. In the experience, and I think everyone that went would have said that was a highlight, to go to that distance and see and experience something that you could not have seen if we had stayed in the parking lot camping. Now, we could see the fish hatchery at the bottom. We could see that grassy spot that somebody would have said, let's just stay down here. But it took effort. It took pain. It took all that it took to get up to the top, to have that experience, to see something we'd never seen before, to see the beauty of God, to experience. And I am telling you, if you can imagine all of that in your mind, I am telling you, some people are sitting on the sideline. Some people just want to stay at the breakfast with Jesus, cooking for them, but they do not want to get up and follow that may involve pain and suffering because of a love for Jesus that knows best. They're like, I don't know, I don't want to do that. Can't we just stay over here and have breakfast on the seashore? And can we have another miraculous catch of fish? And can we say we've been in the presence of Jesus and experienced a miracle and all this great stuff? And we'll let everybody know how awesome you are. And Jesus saying, no, all I need you to do is follow me. See? We want the association and the experience of miracles and the experience of all these things so we can talk about how great and awesome it is. But what Jesus says, you will get the greatest experience. You'll have the greatest understanding of relationship and love if you follow me. Is it true? Yes, it's true. Will you trust it? I pray you will. Because there's nothing like it.